Open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 4. This is not a sermon. So take off your armor and your helmets, and I'm not going to shoot at you, okay? This is something that has really been heavy kind of on my heart for quite some time, and I didn't know if I'd ever have a chance to talk about it. And I didn't know what verses I would use in the Bible. And I wanted to use some other stuff that I had, and I thought God just kept on taking me back to this. And you're going to look at Genesis chapter 4, and you're going to say, I would have wanted a few times to get rid of my brother or sister, but and if you grew up in a family of 8 like I did, and you were kind of in the middle, you might have wanted it to, forgive me, murder them, forgive me for saying that, but we had quite some squabbles, but there's more to this than that. Let's just try to unpack this morning as we look at it. If you would, in chapter 4 of Genesis, and I'm using the NIV. I don't usually preach from that, but I know you have that. Your pew Bibles are NIV, and I think some of you have NIV. We have so many different versions. I usually use the New Living Bible. That's for simple people like me, okay, so they can understand it. But I grew up with the King James, and then I finally graduated to the NIV, you know. Chapter 4 of Genesis, and let's begin reading in verse number 1. And let's kind of just think about this as we go through it, and I may stop and comment. So if Mike has it on the screen, I'm not going to look there. There's nothing there anyway. Adam lay with his wife Eve, and they conceived and gave birth to Cain. So here's Cain. We have the birth of a first child. There's nothing neater than the birth of a child. And it's not just when you're a grandparent, it's when you're a parent. And there's just something about that. I've had the opportunity to be with my wife for all 3 of our kids. And it's just kind of neat, and also have had opportunity not to be in the delivery room, but be very close. Sometimes the circumstances were very tough with our children, especially our oldest daughter. Her first child was born, and she weighed 1 pound and 14 ounces. And if you think that's not small, that's small. Okay? And she said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. She was joyful and filled with God's glory because of that. She glorified the Lord. And just probably like you did when you had your children. Or you saw your grandchildren. They're so neat. There's something about a little baby that's, wow! And later she gave birth to his brother Abel. You want to make a note of this? Psalms 127. Just write that down. And verse 3 is important. You on the back of your bulletin. Linda did this. She's got. I mean, you could just write all kinds of stuff about me, about this sermon. I mean, it's half a page. I take notes myself when Dan preaches, but man, I'll never fill that page out. Thank you, Linda, for doing that. But that's Psalms 127. I'm not going to turn to some of these because time won't permit, because, I just want to do that. And Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked with the soil. They had 2 different kind of occupations, and neither one of them were less important to God. What you do with your life, and I do with my life, is just as important to God in whatever it is. And some of you are in retirement now, and whatever you do now, it's just as important to God. Remember that. There's things in here that I think we look at, Cain killed Abel, that's the end of the story, let's go home. No. These 2 guys are important. Okay? And in the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil and offered them to the Lord. He brought his fruit. I mean, I'm not much of a fruit eater, but he brought them to God. But Abel brought the fat portions. I want you to catch that. Fat portions. The best. Okay? And he brought these things, the fat portions of the firstborn of his flock. The firstborn and the fat portions. He brought the best. I'm not saying that Cain brought the worst. I don't think that was any. It doesn't say that. You can look, and I did. I tried to figure this out. Okay, this is really trying to. Why did God not accept this one? Because you're going to find out just in a minute here that God didn't accept one. Or was it not the what he brought, or how he came? Get it? How he came. This is about worship. Worshiping God. They're coming to worship God. They're not coming to a church. It wasn't the church on 2nd Street in the corner of 5th. Okay, it wasn't there. They didn't even go to a church. They're not bringing an offering. They're bringing something to God. Okay, and here they come. Okay, but Abel brought the portions of some of the firstborn, and the Lord looked in favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, he didn't find favor. You ever found that you weren't in favor with God? All of us have. We felt that way. So-and-so gets this, and I don't get that. Probably most of you made more money than I ever made. But I'm still here. You know what? I'm not talking about how bad you pay the preacher. You can never overpay a pastor. I don't care what it is. Well, you might be overpaying me. Maybe let's not talk about that. But, just take care of him. Take care of him, okay? But, we sometimes think that. But on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. There's something going on here that we need to think about. As we come to worship God, and as you and I come to worship God, we're together, okay? We're together. And so Cain was very angry. I think Cain had problems before he ever showed up. You ever came to church and not want to be here? Don't raise your hand. I have. I was the preacher. That's a bad problem. It's kind of like the teacher going to school and doesn't like the students. And, so they're not too nice to get along with. Okay? And, God has made me kind of face what I did. Now, I'll tell you in a minute a little story about that as we go along. And so Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast, it said. Your anger and my anger shows. When I get angry, my wife says, What are you mad about? I'm just happy. Got this freaky looking smile on my face. She knows. After 55 years, you can't fake them any longer. You can't, it just doesn't work. Even after 25 years, you can't. They just know. And so does the husband, especially women are more given to that. I'll give you a little key here, guys. If you're young and just got married, okay? Don't try to make a face and look like you're happy when you're angry. Just come out and say, yeah, I'm mad. At least you didn't sin. You told the truth. But that's what happens here. And then verse 6, it says, Then the Lord said to Cain, Why are you so angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, catch that, if you do what is right, you will not be accepted. But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. That includes me and you and all of us. We have to master things with God's help. Cain didn't want to. We learn that later. Okay, look what he did in verse 8. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out in the field. Come on, let's go out in the field. Let's get out by ourselves. And what happens? And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother and killed him. End of story. No. And then the Lord said to Cain, doesn't it always get you when your conscience starts bothering you about something that you did? That's good. That's what happened here. God spoke up to Cain and says, hey, where is your brother Abel? Where is he? And Cain says, I don't know. I haven't the foggiest idea. He's gone. He must still be out in the field. And then he said, what have you done? Now we can look at this in a lot of different ways, but I'll tell you one thing that we should, as if we're really honestly, sincerely trying to be a follower of Jesus Christ and God, his Father up in heaven, we should look at this this way. God is really concerned about you and me in our spirituality. He wants us to grow spiritually. He desires that. I'll talk about that in just a few moments again. But he knew. He replied, am I my brother's keeper? You ever thought, well, who cares about my brother? I'm caring about myself. And back to growing up again, you kind of had to fight for your own when you were, at least you did in our family. I got to be careful. My sister's sitting here, but she might not have been old enough, but I think she was old enough to. I had two brothers, and I loved them. I mean, I had three brothers, and the oldest one was like a father to me anyway, because he was 9 years older than and he always treated me nice and bought me candy and did things nice to me and let me ride with him in the truck and all that, and that was great. But my two older brothers, they were always trying to figure out something that they could do to the younger ones to kind of punish them or pester them, And so I can relate to Cain. He just felt like, I don't like this guy. I wish I could get rid of him. And so God, the Lord said, what have you done? In verse 10. Listen, your brother's blood cries out from the ground. God must have been heartbroken when this happened. Think about this. Adam and Eve just got put out of the garden. Is this thing going to work? I don't know. God has a plan beyond that, we know. But he must have been heartbroken just the same. And when something happens to one of our children or grandchildren, many times we're heartbroken. We are. And you say, oh, I wish they would have listened. I wish they would have listened. So what can we learn from this? Belief plus faith equals a spiritual legacy. I want to talk to you about this because this is something I think that, forgive me, and I'm going to say this, and you might get upset, but we have to be truthful about it. We as churches have failed to pass on the legacy the way we should have. I, as a minister, have failed to pass on the legacy like I should have. Our churches aren't filled up. We can blame other things, but how much is this play into it? I have 3 children and 6 grandchildren. Yesterday they were all at our house, remembering my birthday. And my one grandson, I asked him how old I was, and he says, I think around 60. I said, good, I'll give you some money for that. I said, you just add 15 to that. And he's pretty good in school and kind of a sharp kid. And he says, I don't want to figure it out. That's not that important. To him, I look like I'm 60. Well, good. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm 60, and you know what I mean, some of the rest of you. Okay? But children are a blessing to us. We find that here in this chapter 4. She was overjoyed that she had 2 boys. She didn't care if they were male or female. She just thanked God for it. And you probably did too, and that's great. We believe in a God. Cain and Abel came believing that there was a God. They believed that there was a God. Okay? Even though they had 2 different types of occupations that they participated in, they believed that, but then we find out that anger comes out, and that was hidden within Cain all the time. You and I cannot hide our animosity and our anger. If we're true believers in God, we need to let it out to God. That's why you come around the table. That's why you come together to worship. Corporate worship is important. Individual worship is important. Small groups are important. Men's groups, ladies groups, any kind of a thing that you can go to. The thing that you might watch on TV on Channel 9 tonight is important because it's talking about God and the creation of the heavens and the earth. And we need to be thankful that we have opportunity to worship God. And it's like I said, there's been a few times in my life, especially in my younger life, that I didn't want to go to worship. And I'm not going to go into that. But if you do what is right, I want you to think about that verse. But if you do what is right. There isn't a single one of us here this morning in this audience, and I'm sure I'm right about this, that don't know what to do what is right. We know right from wrong. You probably learned it from your grandparents, and you probably learned it from your parents, and you didn't like it, and I didn't either, okay? But we know what is right. Cain knew what is right. He knew the right thing to do. You know, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, and I won't turn to it, but you might want to write it down. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. I'll try to give you the verses, and so you can, if you want to write them down or look them up, you can. In Deuteronomy 6 and verses 1 and 2, you know, as they're getting ready to cross over to the Jordan River, God said this to them through Moses, so that you and your children and their children may fear the Lord. One of the things I think that we need to do more and more is we need to teach our children and our grandchildren how to fear the Lord and how fear turns into love the Lord. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind. And it seems like sometimes we might have, but they have drifted away. And I know there's a lot of things out there that caused them to drift away. And that's why this is so important. Belief plus faith equals a spiritual legacy. This legacy of spirituality that we need to continue, even I don't care how old you are and how many children you don't have. I don't care if you've been married, divorced. I don't care if you're single or who you are. You still have an influence on nieces and nephews and others and people that you work with. We're all around people all the time. And we were in our class this morning talking about that. And someone said, I can't remember who it was, it might have been Ralph. I'll give you credit, Ralph, okay? We influence people that we're around. We don't even think about it. Well, you don't have no influence. Oh, yes, you do. Oh, yes, you do. God is passionately interested in your positive spiritual growth. And I think we need to be reminded of that. We do not give ourselves enough credit and enough credit to God that He's really interested in us. Me? I'm just a nobody. No, you aren't. No, you aren't. You are somebody who is vitally important. You know, who you are and what you do in worship is incredibly important. You say, what? I just got up this morning, and I'm not just talking about corporate worship. When you worship God yourself, in times of meditation, and when you're in a small group or someplace else, or God draws you into something, or forgive me, I know you have to use this, but there's a lot of good stuff on here that you can find. There's a lot of junk too, but you know, and you all know that, and I'm not going to go into it. Okay, some just came on here that somebody died, but remember that. Who you are and what you do in worship is incredibly important. Coming to worship together corporately, we must never lose the sight the fact that worship involves all that you are. And I know you probably, and I don't always either. We need to think about this when we come to worship God individually and corporately as a body of believers. I'm ready to listen. I'm opening myself up to Him. I don't want to hear the preacher. I didn't come to see him, and you didn't. And I'm ahead of myself, but you got some great elders here. You got some great people who are trustees. You got some good people who care about the church in general. But you're here to worship God. Don't look at what I got on. Yesterday, I got to tell you this story, just to illustrate this. My kids were all there, and my daughter-in-law, who always is picking on me anyway, that's what daughter-in-laws are for, and she's always picking on me about something because she probably wants me to fix something for her. So she says, I have to be good to you, so I'm not going to say anything bad to you today. Okay. Well, I took off my shirt. We were outside it got up to 75 degrees. Did you notice that? Probably got up to 85 up here. You're further north. I mean, I'm further south. Okay. So I took off my shirt and I had an undershirt on. Guess what? I had it inside out. Oh, they all had a big fit about it. He didn't even know how to put his clothes on anymore. Oh, let's take him to the rest home. Okay. I never changed it. I don't care. Do you see what I mean? It's so true. But what we do and how we act in worship is incredibly important. We must never lose the sight of the fact that worship involves everything that you are. Everything. Your mind, your body, your soul, everything. It involves everything that you are. And what you are and what you do in worship is vitally and very incredibly important. I can't say that enough. Why I'm saying that is because that's part of the legacy that you and I need to leave to our children and grandchildren. And because of that, we need to remember that. All of us must remember that there is only one God. Now that sounds kind of ridiculous to say. I know I'm talking to the choir. And you're the choir. You know that. Why do you say it then? Because I think sometimes we forget about the basic fundamentals of true spirituality. There's only one of them. He's up there, but he's down here. Right? You know he's here. You feel him. You know him. You know? And there's somebody in the Bible that said that too. His name was Jesus, of course. And I'll give you the verses, and I'm not going to look them up. Luke chapter 4, Christ said that. Chapter 4 and verse 8 is one example. Luke 4 and verse 8, and then Matthew 4 and verse 10. You can look that up and see that. Christ talks about there's only one God, the Father in heaven. But a personal example that might help you to understand that better is, I went through some changes in my life. Most of you know that I used to preach every Sunday and all this, and I'm not going to go into why the church isn't there and why I'm here, and I don't even know all the answers to that myself, okay? But I was sitting here listening to Pastor Dan, and I got my hearing aid out now, so I can't hear you, but I do have them in when Dan's preaching. Okay? But a personal example that I was moved from the pulpit to the pew. I just want you to listen to this and try to figure this out. And you can relate to it too. Many of you say, well, I don't ever want to go up there. I didn't either. I never planned on being a preacher, and I think I told you that, okay? So I was gonna marry this pretty girl named Linda, and that's what pretty one. Linda means pretty one, okay? So I found this pretty girl, the farmer's daughter, and 6 daughters, and the poor farmer, he milked cows. He couldn't have any boys, so he had 6 daughters, and only one of them would milk the cows, and that was the one that I got. Okay? And so I fell in love with this girl. And I thought, oh boy, this is going to be great. I'll just go to church when I want to and fix up cars and race down the road. And I liked that because I was in a junkyard, parts yard, scrap yard, whatever you want to call it, And I had access to all that stuff, and this is going to be a joyful life. Whoopee! You with me? You all went there. Yeah. Guess what? This pretty girl was praying that God would lead her to a spiritual young man. I was not spiritual. I just went to church. I was a baptized believer, but I didn't care about church. I wanted to get out the door as quick as I could. And I thought, she'd be the ticket to go with. Well, look where I am today. Yeah. It's not her fault, but it's partially her fault. Okay? This story that God calls you to do something, I don't know if I agree with that. Sometimes he just kind of guides you into these things. You know what I mean? And that's what we need to do. We need to pass that along to them, And so I was put in the pew, from the pulpit to the pew. Dan always has 3 questions. I don't have any questions today, Okay, but in his outline, it's the first thing I look at when he's up there. I look down at those 3 questions. Oh, what's he got today that he's going to talk about? One of his questions a while back, and you don't have to look this up if you have the old bulletins from before. It was from the Passover lamb message that he brought. He asked this question. I don't know where he gets them. It's none of my business, and I'm not going to go there. Okay, but here it is. Am I living as someone who has been redeemed? Answer. Think about this yourself. Am I living as someone who has been redeemed? Or am I still a slave to my past? Or am I still a slave to my past? I got to thinking about that question. And so I put the answer down here in front of you. And I'll be as transparent as I can with you about this too. The answer to that question for me would be this. Is my faith founded on God and Jesus Christ? Or is my faith founded on my past successes and failures? God does not found our faith or look at our faith on our past successes and failures. He's a forgiving, loving God, and if he wouldn't have, he would have never have sent his son, Jesus Christ. And you and I need to remember that. I think too many times in our spiritual walk, as we pass it along to the next generation, we feel so inadequate that I can't. Why should I tell them? Because you should. God will take care of the rest. And that's vitally important. Worship demands something. The second thing, it demands faith. You can believe all you want. Every one of us are believers. You wouldn't be here if you weren't a believer. I wouldn't. Why would I come to a church? Goodness sakes. Quick Trip's got better food. We could go someplace. Over here to the pizza place. And and probably my wife will end up there taking me there. And this Mexican place down the street down here, and maybe Ray will talk her into it again. I don't know, but we could have went there this morning. Maybe had breakfast. I don't know if they serve breakfast or not. Why did I come to worship? Because I believe, but I have faith. Faith coupled together with belief works. Well, you know that. Why am I telling you that? Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith it is impossible. You know it. Hebrews 11:6. It's impossible to please God. I have to have faith. Okay? Don't listen to all this. That's just either my pump or something. I'm not going to blow up. If you hear this click or a blink, no, don't worry about it, okay? Used to tell people that were in old times. Don't worry about it. It's just, if I quit, then I have to quit. Okay, I'm done. I'll just fall over. Okay? You have to have faith. It's impossible to please God. Because when I please God, he will draw near to me. Woo! I like that, don't you? He will draw near to us. I like a person like that. I could say something about that when you were dating that nice gal that you're sitting by, if you're married. Oh, let's get a little closer. And then they put bucket seats in cars, and she fell in the column, I couldn't get her out. Yeah. Why am I here? Why am I here? Cain and Abel wanted to draw near to God. They wanted to draw near to God. There's more to that story than Cain killing Abel. They really had a desire to draw near to God. When you have faith and you draw near to God, it's like going fishing or hunting. Some of you are fishermen people. I used to fish all the time when I was a kid. I quit. I used to hunt some too, and I quit that too. Okay? I don't even own a gun anymore. But, when you go fishing and you don't catch any fish, and when you go hunting, whether it's bow hunting or not, got a grandson that goes bow hunting, 2 grandsons, and they always end up with deer. I mean, how do you do that? Well, Grandpa, we shoot at them. Oh, okay. But suppose all the deer took off to the next county and all the fish ran away. How would you feel? Well, you feel empty. God never leaves people feeling empty when they have faith in Him. He's always going to come through. And sometimes it may be hard for that to happen. So let's go back to a couple of questions. And I said I wouldn't ask you any question, but I have to. So what is real worship, and do I need to be in church? Yes or no? You can answer that. I want you to think about those things. What is real worship, and do I need to be in a church or not? Well, Hebrews, and here we're back in Hebrews, the Jewish people was written to Jewish Christians. That's what Hebrews was written to. So you look at Hebrews and you think about that. And the 10th chapter in verse 25 says, don't forsake your assembling of yourselves together. Well, then I probably should go to church. Well, that's true, yes. But the book of Hebrews was written to these Jewish Christians, and what they were trying to do is show them that Christianity was superior to Judaism. Spirituality is superior to staying away from God. Remember that, okay? So that's why you come to worship. James chapter 4 and verse 8. James 4 and verse 8 says, draw near to God. We already read that to you, okay? And what? He will draw near to you. And so what do I need to think about? I need to think about the outstanding characteristics of God. What are they? I'm just going to give you a few. God is the most stunning. Get these. He's stunning. He is. What's stunning? Go look it up. Look it up on your phone, okay? Satisfying. Satisfying. He is. Strengthening. Helping. Providing. Loving. Guiding. Forgiving person that you and I could ever come in contact with. Now be honest with yourself, as I have to be. Do I think about that a lot? No. And I need to. And if I do, I live that way. And thus I pass it along to the next generation. Okay? Remember these two questions. Why do we worship, and do I need to come together? Cain and Abel brought their offerings to the Lord. Verses 3 and 4 of our text said that. And as they came there, they brought different things. Each one came with a different attitude. One was right, one was accepted, one wasn't. Okay? But true worship demands that we have faith. And evidently, Cain didn't have true faith in God. Sad. Yeah. Thus, I can go to a church and I can sit there for years and years and years and not have faith. And I think, and forgive me for saying this, but I think it's true. Many people attend a church and they don't have faith, but they believe in God. Faith is vital. It's vital. I have to have it. I need it as bad as you do. True worship demands that faith, as we already looked at, Hebrews 11:6. It's like sending a person to get a board stretcher. Now listen to this story. I used to work at a lumber yard. And this lumber yard, this guy his first name was Denny, that ran it, and they're no longer in existence anymore. But Denny, I was working there, and I was outside in the alley, cold old place. Lumber yards like the Lambert lumber yard up here. They're built just like them. Some of you remember that one. Okay, coldest place in the winter and you could ever be. Wood brings in the cold air, piles of wood. He hollers out at me, "Hey, Jim, come here." This guy You took the wrong wood out to him. You were supposed to take 10-foot 2x4s and you took studs. They're only 8 feet, not quite 8 feet. And I remember him doing this to me. He says, you need to go find the board stretcher. I knew there was no such thing as a board stretcher. Some people would believe that. You'd have to believe that there was a board stretcher. If I could have looked around for hours. This is the 8 o'clock in the morning. This farmer guy was mad. He was just livid that this cookie kid, and I was just a kid, took the wrong wood out there and he didn't send a board stretcher. But guess what? God is our board stretcher. Do you believe that? He is really. He stretches us out. He knows how to do that. So true legacy consists not of what we leave behind, but what we instill in others. I'll read that to you again so you can get it, if you want to write it. True spiritual legacy consists not of what we leave behind, but what we instill in others. That's why you come together and worship together. Each one of us instill things in others by the things that we say, the way we act towards each other. What time is it getting to be anyway? I got to tell myself when to stop. And so I'm not going to turn to this, but we used it earlier. Hebrews 12 and verses 1 through 6. We already read it to you, but you can turn back to it if you want to. That's a true legacy spiritually. Remember, number one, those surrounding us, the great witnesses that have went on before. I tell you a personal story, and I don't know if I got time to do that because I want to do something else. It was about my sister and Jean, or Kathy's sister, Jean. She called me 3 years before she passed away, or 3 weeks before she passed away, and talked to me for about 3 hours. That became a legacy to me. She told me things that I'd wonder, why is she telling me this? Because she wanted me to know. But we leave a legacy for others all the time. You know, he tells them to strip off every weight. Strip off that weight. What's holding you back to leave a legacy for someone else? Your sons, your daughters, your nephews, your nieces. The people you work with. You're leaving a legacy. You're leaving a legacy. Run with endurance. Maintain and look to Jesus. Look at Him. Don't look at something else. Always look to Him. Disregard the shame of the cross. We need to pass that along to the next generation. The cross was not a shameful thing. It was a glorious thing that Christ died on the cross, but He rose from the grave. He overcame that. And remember, God is, and I already mentioned this, God is passionately interested in your spiritual growth. If we pass that idea and that thought along to our kids and our grandkids and our nieces and our nephews and our fellow workers, do you see how much how do we do that? How do we do that? Just by the little things that you say and you do. Acts of kindness. Saying hello. I'm always walking up to people, and my wife gets kind of upset with me, but I love to talk to older people. Maybe I'm getting old. And the other day I talked to a guy, and I don't know who he was. I don't even know where he lived. I stood and talked to him for a few minutes and walked away and said, "You have a good day." He says, "Thanks for stopping." You know what? that influenced that guy. I'm not saying that to brag, but I don't know who he is. I may never see him again. He probably wonder who that kook was. Yeah. But that's the way we think sometimes. But God wants us to go out of our realm, go out of the way things that we do. And, it'd be because don't ever say, I can't do it. Because you can. You can. You can. It makes no difference what your age is. Okay? Just a few weeks ago, I was to the eye doctor, and he says, "You got macula, the beginning of the macula." I said, "Good. That's a nice name. I like that. What's it mean?" "Well, it means you might go blind someday." I said, "Oh, good." I said, "Do you know what I do?" And he said, "Yeah, I know what you do." I said, "Well, I can still read my Bible some." So I've been doing some other things, and guess what? This is a miracle how God works. I got to tell you this story real quick. We were driving down the road one day, and this lady calls me up. What's the name of that? Mangosteen. This lady called me up, and she said, "You got to start taking this mangosteen." Mangosteen? Never heard of it before. Well, I used to take the liquid stuff. She said, "You take 3 of these a day," and she says, "You're going to your eyes will get better." I've been taking it for 3 weeks, and guess what? I can read this Bible again without a magnifying glass. Wow. Does God work? Yeah. I'm going to close very quickly with this. I have a list of 3 things or 5 things that you could do, but I think this is more important, is this newspaper. You don't get the messenger, I know. Maybe Ray and Kathy do. They live in West Concord. But there's a story behind this story. When I was a little kid, we went to a little church in West Concord, and I write about this in my story. I'm not going to go into my story either and tell you that. Someday maybe I'll share that with you if God allows me to do it. Each one of us should write our own story, by the way, our own spiritual story. Pass it along to your kids, your grandkids. It's important that they read it. You can tell about when you became a believer, and they'll understand it. They'll understand why you did it. But when I was a little kid, there was a lady in our church named Eva. Kathy will know her. I was just a little skinny little kid. Went to Bible school just like the rest of you. Bible school teachers are key in this. And if you get a chance to teach someone, and all of us do. She taught me Jesus loved me. She taught me the books of the Bible. And I remember sitting in there and trying to color things. And I just thought, this is just a great place to be. Well, Eva had a son who taught me when I was a teenager. And this son was a fairly smart man when it came to Bible things. In fact, he knew the Old Testament so well that he understood Old Testament history and how it tied together with the New Testament. And I was bored stiff sitting in that class. But he taught me another thing. He got us, there was about 4 boys in there and maybe a girl or 2. He said, you need to learn to be in God's Word on a daily basis. And I thought, read God's Word on Monday morning? No. I go to church. That's enough. For a 14-year-old kid. All I cared about is cars and running around, having fun. But guess what? He was patient. He was kind, and he got us to start doing that. And he would keep track. He would write it in a little book. We always were going to steal his book and tear it up, but we didn't. And guess what? He had a son who now publishes a newspaper. Okay? This is not the first, the second, and the third generation. He went to that same church. I don't believe in everything that this son does, but in his theology necessarily. But I want to read to you just a little portion of an article that he put in there. Because he learned from that same grandma that I did. Some of the same things that I did. And probably from his father and his mother. And here he writes, a time of hope. A time of hope. It goes like this. It says, even when much feels like everything is wrong, we keep drawing up. We find a way to be persistent and move forward, even when it's very hard. In Paul's letter to the Ephesians, we come upon a word, hope. Hope. Do you know what? That's all I need to read. What I'm trying to tell you is this is the third generation. And it was passed on from one to the next to the next. Do you see how important it is? And so as you and I think about this, and as we think about leaving a legacy behind, a spiritual legacy, just open up your mind just a little bit and say, hey, how can I do just a little bit better job than that? And the last thing I want to show you is this. This is part, and I'll share this on at Cowboy Church. So you can come to Cowboy Church. I don't know when it is. It's not until April or May or something. In Casson. I'll be doing a testimony entitled My Story. You say, big deal. Your story is just as important. But you need to write it down. Write it down. And pass it on as part of your legacy. Let's pray. God, we're so thankful that we can come. I hope that you will allow this to reverberate in our minds to help us become more spiritual as we pass along the legacy of your Son, Jesus Christ. I know sometimes it's hard to do that. It's hard for all of us. It's not an easy task. But we really need to really think about it and ask you, God, how would you want me to do it? Help us to remember it's sometimes the small, unique, just little things that we do with a grandchild, a granddaughter, a niece, a nephew, a fellow worker, someone we come in contact with, that we begin to lay that legacy upon them. And somehow later, they come to know you as Jesus Christ. Bless us as we do this. Guide us. Help us not to let Satan say that we failed because we didn't do enough. But help us to trust you with all our heart and lean on your understanding and not ours. We pray it in your precious Son's name. Amen.